Hey guys, welcome back to another video. So today is going to be a little bit different as we will focus on one person in particular to try to figure out what to expect from the trucking industry. Now, of course, I'm talking about the newly sworn in Secretary of Transportation, Sean Duffy. Considering the fact that he will be directly responsible for our industry, we need to understand, first of all, what a DOT or Transportation Secretary does and who Sean Duffy is. Ready? Let's go! So let's start with a general overview of what a Secretary of Transportation actually does. Well, in short, this is a person who is in charge of overseeing the nation's transportation systems, including highways, railroads, air travel, maritime transportation, and public transit. Now, this is also a person who, among a slew of other things, also develops policies and regulations pertaining to the trucking industry. Now, to give you an idea of what a transportation secretary can actually do, let's go through some examples from history. So first we have Drew Lewis, who actually helped implement the Motor Carrier Act of 1980, which basically deregulated the trucking industry and increased competition. He also supported the gas tax hike, which funded road improvements. Then there is Elizabeth Dole, who is pretty much the reason why we have mandatory drug testing for truckers. Then there was Rodney Slater, who actually strengthened hours of service regulations. Norman Mineta created the TSA and actually introduced the hazmat transport regulations after 9/11. Elaine Chao actually eased some of the ELD mandates and pushed for more flexibility in hours of service. So basically, it's safe to say that the Secretary of Transportation can have some notable effects on the trucking industry and, more importantly, how we experience working in this industry. So now this brings us to today, Sean Duffy. Who is Sean Duffy? What does he believe in? And most importantly, what does his record in the trucking industry actually show? Well, Duffy actually doesn't have much of a record with trucking directly or transportation for that matter. But that does not mean that he did not advocate for and against things that could impact the trucking industry. During his time as a member of the House Financial Services Committee, he actually worked to reduce banking regulations for small businesses, including independent truckers who rely on loans for equipment purchases. And he actually advocated for easier access to credit for truckers and carriers. He also supported increased federal investment in highways and bridges and backed efforts to modernize roads to promote freight movement efficiency. Duffy also supported tax cuts that could benefit trucking businesses, allowing them to deduct more business expenses, although this was met with some criticism from truckers because they thought this is there to benefit the carriers, not so much independent truck drivers. And finally, he opposed overregulation for truckers. And this is the point I want to stop at because this is the reason he gained so much support from the trucking industry groups, as well as independent truck drivers. Sean Duffy is actually the guy who openly criticized the 2017 federal ELD rule, arguing that it would hurt small businesses and reduce driver flexibility. And he actually supported legislation that would reduce or completely repeal ELD requirements, favoring paper logs for small operators. He's also the person who pushed for less federal interference in trucking operations, arguing that excessive safety and environmental regulations make it harder for small truckers to compete. And finally, he of course fought against the EPA trucking emissions rules that force truckers to upgrade their equipment at a higher cost. Now, as I already mentioned, remember, the thing that earned him the support of so many trucking groups as well as independent truckers is his stance on overregulation of truckers. He was actually one of 25 people who signed a letter to the FMCSA supporting OOIDA's petition that asked for small business truckers to be exempt from the ELD mandate. So no surprise, the OIDA is jumping for joy right now, and as they said, and I'm going to quote this, "We look forward to continue working with Duffy in advancing the priorities of small business truckers across America, including expanding truck parking, fighting freight fraud, and rolling back burdensome unnecessary regulations." Now, those of you who have been watching this channel for a while already know that I have a very big issue with the overregulation of this industry, specifically truckers, right? It seems like, despite the fact that there are multiple players in the logistics chain, if we look at how we move loads, right? There is the shipper, there is the broker, there is the receiver, there is us. The trucker is the one who always gets hit on the head with those regulations, while everyone else kind of is unscathed. So considering his history, I look forward to what Sean Duffy does with his new position as Secretary of Transportation. Now, what about you guys? How do you feel about him? Do you think that he might change the industry for the better, for the worst, or perhaps there's not going to be any palpable change at all? Super curious to hear your thoughts. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for joining and watching today. I hope you have a very safe weekend. Again, stay safe, stay healthy, and keep learning. See you in the next video.